Tim Burton has had plenty of hit films over the years, many of which have gone on to become classics. But as with any filmmaker, he's also had some misses too. From vampire flicks and lackluster remakes to biopics and modern-day fairy tales, here are Tim Burton's films ranked from worst to best. Adapting a beloved television show into film is usually a pretty big risk. And unfortunately for Burton, taking on this particular 1960s series didn't work out very well. In 2012, Burton took on Dark Shadows, which was based on a gothic soap opera that originally aired from 1966 to 1971. Dark Shadows tells the story of Johnny Depp's Barnabas Collins, an ancient and immortal vampire who attempts to assimilate into 20th century society. Burton has worked with Depp many times, but Dark Shadows is easily one of their least successful collaborations. The film garnered terrible reviews, and despite benefiting from Burton's signature cinematic flourishes, Depp's silly performance and the insanely outlandish plot really dragged the movie down. Dark Shadows probably seemed like the perfect adaptation for Burton, but in the end, it proved one of his weakest efforts to date. The final shot in the original Planet of the Apes is one of the most iconic scenes in film history, and in 2001, Burton made the daring choice to helm a remake of this classic movie. With Mark Wahlberg taking on Heston's role, Burton crafted a relatively loose adaptation of the original, where an astronaut named Leo Davidson lands on an entirely new planet inhabited by apes and tries to overthrow their tyrannical rule. Despite the film's otherwise sterling cast, it performed poorly with critics and won multiple Golden Raspberry Awards thanks to a terrible lead performance by Wahlberg and a weird, bizarrely confusing ending. Even though it performed well at the box office, Burton said he would rather jump out a window than direct a sequel, due in large part to the overbearing studio interference he endured on the project. Fox, the parent studio of the film, didn't pursue the option either, simply rebooting the entire franchise 10 years later with 2011's Rise of the Planet of the Apes. As far as classic Disney films go, Dumbo is still a firm fan favorite, and in 2019, Burton helmed a live-action remake of the original 1941 film. The movie tells the story of Dumbo from a human perspective, focusing on a World War I amputee who takes on a job as an animal caretaker for a traveling circus, where his main responsibility is caring for a pregnant elephant who eventually gives birth to a baby with extraordinarily large ears. But this classic tale didn't seem to translate with a live-action cast, and it fared poorly with critics and at the box office. The overall critical conclusion was that the film failed to capture the magic of the original, thanks in part to an unnecessarily expanded story, which isn't hugely welcome in a film nobody was clamoring for in the first place. Lewis Carroll's classic novels Alice's Adventures in Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass have inspired generations of artists and readers alike since their initial releases in 1865 and 1871. And considering that Burton has always gravitated towards dark and fantastical stories, it's probably not surprising that he chose to adapt Carroll's signature work in 2010. But even though Alice in Wonderland seemed like the ideal project for a filmmaker like Burton, the movie just didn't land. Despite a star-studded cast and Burton's typical stylistic flair, the film earned mediocre reviews thanks to its subpar CGI effects, a number of bizarre changes to Carroll's story, and Depp's cringeworthy dance number at the end of the film. However, this didn't stop Burton from carrying on his Carroll-inspired narrative. In 2016, he produced Alice Through the Looking Glass, which saw the original cast reprise their roles. Let's just say that film didn't fare particularly well with critics either. With Mars Attacks, Burton took the potentially risky decision to base a film on a popular trading card game, and well, it didn't really work out. The campy story finds the residents of Earth and Mars meeting officially for the first time, though things go sour pretty quickly, and ultimately, the humans must find a way to defeat the Martians. Upon its initial release, the film received fairly lukewarm reviews, but in the end, pacing issues, a squandered cast, and a concept that seemed great on paper but doesn't work in the final execution makes this one of Burton's less successful outings. However, in the years since its debut, it's become a cult classic, proving that Burton's instincts were certainly right for certain audiences. In 2016, Burton adapted the popular children's novel Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children, which, thanks to its supernatural bent and an emotional core, must have been right up his alley. The film focuses on a home run by Miss Peregrine that houses paranormally gifted children and helps to hone their abilities as best as possible. Miss Peregrine and her children hide themselves in a time loop that she created, allowing them to evade unwanted and negative attention. But as they mess with time more and more, the children and Miss Peregrine wind up separated. Critics didn't exactly love the narrative of Miss Peregrine, but still praised Burton's visual stylings, and ultimately the film earned decent reviews. In the end, using a children's novel rather than an original concept failed Burton here, as the story itself just isn't gripping enough to rank among the director's stronger efforts, resulting in a fairly forgettable film. Almost everyone will be familiar with Roald Dahl's classic novel, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, not least because it's been adapted a fair few times over the years. In 2005, Burton and Johnny Depp took on this cherished tale, with Depp as Willy Wonka alongside his Finding Neverland co-star Freddie Highmore. One of Burton's crucial additions to this film came in the form of Wilbur Wonka, Willy Wonka's father, which the director felt gave new dimension to a well-known character. And while critics enjoyed Burton's more in-depth look at Willy Wonka, as far as fans of the original are concerned, it's pretty much impossible to replace Gene Wilder's iconic original performance. Sadly, Depp's quirkier go at the role indeed felt off kilter next to Wilder's portrayal. By adding new songs, mixing up the narrative, and providing Wonka with a full backstory, Burton missed the mark on what made Dahl's book and the Wilder film so popular in the first place. Consequently, as the years have gone by, audiences have largely forgotten Burton's take on Wonka. In 1984, during his tenure at Disney, Burton crafted a short film called Frankenweenie, a clever retelling of the classic Frankenstein story about a boy's beloved dog who is brought back to life, only to be hunted down by the boy's terrified neighbors. Disney ended up firing Burton after he presented them with the film, since they believed it was hugely unsuitable for children. But in 2012, he returned to the project and made it into a feature-length animated film. Ironically, Disney ended up producing the movie, which proved to be both a critical and commercial success for the director and studio alike. Earning over $81 million at the worldwide box office, the film thrilled critics and audiences and even scored nominations at the Academy Awards and Golden Globes. It also holds the distinction of becoming the first black and white film and the first stop-motion film to be released in IMAX 3D. Tim Burton doesn't usually go for biopics or historical dramas, but with 2014's Big Eyes, he made a film that sat firmly in both categories. Telling the true story of artist Margaret Keane, Big Eyes is a stylistic yet harrowing portrait of a woman who's overshadowed by her less talented husband, Walter. Starring Amy Adams and Christoph Waltz as Margaret and Walter, the film ended up doing pretty well critically. Much of the praise heaped on the film came largely to Adams and Waltz, two performers at the top of their craft. Burton's fantastical, colorful visuals didn't exactly hurt either. By handling Margaret Keane's struggles with empathy and care, the film presents a rare glimpse into this artist's well-known work, even though she went without credit for years thanks to her conniving husband. It was also a rare awards season favorite for Burton, earning a Golden Globe for Adams and a nomination for Waltz. Based on a 1998 novel by Daniel Wallace, Burton's 2003 adaptation of Big Fish became one of his signature films, and thanks to its fantastical imagery, whimsical premise, and extraordinarily sharp script and performances, it's easy to see why. The film follows the fanciful and imaginative life stories of a traveling salesman named Edward Bloom, told to his son while Edward is on his deathbed. Burton was drawn to the project thanks to his own strained relationship with his parents, both of whom he lost in the early 2000s. As such, he wanted to help tell an intimate story of a parent and child's reconciliation before the former's passing. All told, Big Fish is still one of Burton's most beloved movies, likely due to the young Ewan McGregor's anchoring performance and the visual feast that the film offers up, which strikes an incredible contrast to the grounded story that's instantly relatable to anybody with family issues of their own. Despite Burton's occasional misses, the director is clearly well suited for the horror genre, and he made that very clear in 1999's Sleepy Hollow. Very loosely based on the classic Washington Irving short story, the film follows Ichabod Crane, a police constable sent to investigate the haunting of the titular small village by the mysterious ghost of the Headless Horseman. A perfect film for any Halloween season, Sleepy Hollow presents an extraordinarily strange but ultimately successful take on Irving's original tale, adding in a few extra elements, including a new twist on the horseman's role in the story. Burton had already made his mark in filmmaking by 1999, but this movie definitely proved that when it came to classic horror, he was capable of doing things no other director could. Featuring vocal performances by Burton regulars Johnny Depp and Helena Bonham Carter, the touching stop-motion film Corpse Bride tells the tale of titular bride Emily, who inadvertently marries a nervous human man, Victor, just before his actual wedding to another human named Victoria. As Victor and Emily take an unexpected journey through the realms of the living and the dead, things begin to get complicated, and more than a little bit creepy too. Thanks to the imaginative animation and the emotional story, Corpse Bride garnered hugely positive reviews. And although it harkens back to the otherworldly look of the Burton-produced The Nightmare Before Christmas, Corpse Bride succeeds by utilizing an entirely new plot that bears all of Burton's signature touches and flourishes. Between the groundbreaking animation techniques, bittersweet story, and exceptionally beautiful visuals, Corpse Bride quickly became one of Burton's most well-loved films. Based on the classic musical by Stephen Sondheim, Sweetie Todd tells the gripping and bloody story of a vengeful barber named Sweeney Todd, who returns to London to avenge the loss of his wife and daughter at the hands of a corrupt judge. The cast features plenty of Burton regulars, as well as a few standout newcomers like Sacha Baron Cohen. Sondheim himself enjoyed the adaptation, and it performed well enough critically. Plus, casting choices like Baron Cohen, Alan Rickman, and Helena Bonham Carter paired perfectly with Burton's more macabre sensibilities. Clearly, the Golden Globes agreed, considering the film was nominated for several awards at the 2008 ceremony, nabbing Best Motion Picture, Musical or Comedy, as well as an award for Depp's performance as Todd. After the monumental success of Burton's first Batman film, it makes sense that he agreed to come back for a sequel. So, in 1992, both him and Michael Keaton returned for Batman Returns. In this installment, Danny DeVito, Michelle Pfeiffer, and Christopher Walken play a trio of grotesque villains: the Penguin, Catwoman, and conniving executive Max Schreck. The film was actually a struggle for Burton to get produced. Burton and Keaton only agreed to a comeback after Keaton got a significant raise, and Burton was assured that it wouldn't have to be too much of a sequel to the first movie. In the end, Batman's Return marked a darker, deeper take on the Caped Crusader, and gave the world a genre-defining performance from Pfeiffer as the seductive, psychotic Catwoman. Sadly, Burton and Keaton both passed on a third film, leaving the world with this.
What killed the dinosaurs? The Ice Age!
For Burton's feature film debut as a director, he took on the beloved children's character of Pee Wee Herman. After Paul Reubens' TV show about Pee-wee proved to be a huge success, a full-length movie was an inevitability, and Reubens himself wrote the script alongside comedy legend Phil Hartman, known for his work on The Simpsons and Saturday Night Live. Using a book about scriptwriting as a guide, Reubens crafted a tight script for his project. As he later told a crowd during a panel at South by Southwest, "It's a 90-minute film, it's a 90-page script. On page 30, I lose my bike. On page 60, I find it. It's literally exactly what they said to do in the book." Burton was more than ready to prove himself, and helped along by Reubens' considerable talents, he certainly did. Critics adored the movie's whimsical attitude and the continuity behind Reubens' signature character. And helped along by a number of clever jokes, the film just ends up working from beginning to end. As a director, Burton was clearly off to a great start. Gotham's Dark Knight has been rebooted a countless number of times since he made his comic book premiere in 1939, but The Caped Crusader made his official Warner Brothers film debut in 1989, with Tim Burton along as director. Batman is widely regarded as one of the best Batman movies ever made, and the genesis of the modern superhero movie, meaning you've partially got Burton to thank for those comic book movies Marvel and DC are releasing every 7 hours. With Michael Keaton in the titular role, alongside Jack Nicholson's thrilling turn as the Joker, the film was a critical and commercial success, earning over $400 million total worldwide, and it was the highest-grossing DC comic book film until its successor, The Dark Knight, knocked it off its pedestal in 2008. Thanks to a winning cast and Burton's sharp direction, the film was universally lauded by critics and fans alike. Those fans were particularly thrilled to see a gritty, dark superhero story brought to the big screen, and one that ended up changing the genre for years to come. The other secret to the film's success was, undoubtedly, Nicholson's performance as the Joker. His performance set a new standard of villainy for generations of Jokers, inspiring everyone from Heath Ledger to Joaquin Phoenix, and it's still widely regarded as one of the movie's ultimate highlights.
If you gotta go with the slime.
Surprisingly enough, one of Burton's best films is one of his most grounded and realistic projects to date. A biopic of filmmaker Ed Wood, who is famous for making cult films, 1994's Ed Wood stars Johnny Depp as the titular director and focuses on a period of Wood's life where he befriended the actor Bela Lugosi. Critics love the film, in large part due to Depp and Martin Landau's stunning performances, the gorgeous cinematography, a number of perfect one-liners, and Burton's straightforward yet creative approach to the biopic. To be sure, Ed Wood is an unusual movie that nobody knew they needed, but it's cemented itself as one of the director's most important and well-regarded films. Thanks to Burton's incredibly earnest approach in his biography of Wood, who is regarded as one of the worst directors in history, he conversely managed to cement a legacy for himself as a great one. Burton's comedy horror classic Beetlejuice has been a cult favorite since its release back in 1988, and with good reason. As Burton's breakout film, it tells the terrifyingly yet hilarious story of a young undead couple who end up haunting their former home and trying their best to torment its new human inhabitants. Unfortunately, they're also accompanied by a particularly irritating poltergeist named Beetlejuice. But critics fell in love with the film long before it became a cult classic. Those critics lavished praise on the movie, which also marked the first ever collaboration between Keaton and Burton. Led by Keaton's delightfully bombastic yet carefully crafted performance as Beetlejuice,
It's showtime.
the film allowed Burton's spookier sensibilities to play out freely, resulting in a movie that still holds up as a classic today. In the aftermath of its theatrical debut, it ended up winning an Academy Award for Best Makeup and even spawned a few spin-offs, including a handful of video games and even a Broadway musical. When people think of Tim Burton, it's likely their minds will go right to Edward Scissorhands, and honestly, it's pretty easy to see why. Released in 1990, this signature Burton film tells the incredible and tragic tale of a manufactured human named Edward who remains unfinished, with crude scissors serving as his hands. When he wanders out of his home, he finds sanctuary with the suburban Boggs family. With the help of this new family, Edward does his best to fit in, but soon discovers that society has never been kind to outcasts and weirdos. Thanks to its fantastical imagery, a superb performance by Depp, and a wide array of larger-than-life set pieces, Edward Scissorhands remains the one movie that best displays Burton's signature style and unparalleled directional flourish. Suitably enough, it's also a favorite of Burton's too, with the director admitting in the past that it was the most personal film he had ever made. Check out one of our newest videos right here. Plus, even more Looper videos about your favorite movies are coming soon. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell so you don't miss a single one.